Just over the Massachusetts-Connecticut border is Six Flags New England. Tucked away, this park sports a solid 12 roller coasters to its lineup. However, this park has very different levels of quality throughout that lineup. So let's take a look at all 12 and dive into where they all rank among themselves. Leading off at number 12 is the park's kiddie coaster, Great Chase. Now this remains my only missing credit from the park, and as an E&F Miler kiddie coaster, I don't expect to grab it anytime soon. That's really all I have to say about there. Next up at number 11 is the ride most likely to be removed soon in Goliath, the giant inverted boomerang from Vekoma. Now, once this ride was relocated from California, the park added new trains and has since become unrideable. That is, if it's ever open at all. In the 15 years or so that I've been coming here, I've personally only seen it run once, and I rode it once. But even if it opens again, I really wouldn't touch it because of how painful that only ride was, and seeing as it was closed for the entirety of 2021, that might not happen at all. Now, rounding out the top 10 is Catwomans Whip, a Zero Trevally coaster that has 4 other clones across the train. Now, it's known for those massively long trains on the ride. It's applied some real whip in the back, but it's definitely a family coaster. It's not exciting enough to really move up any higher on this list. At number 9, we have Gotham City Gauntlet, Escape from Arkham Asylum. Now, besides having that offensively long name, this ride just isn't that good. It's uncomfortable, and it was relocated. It's a wild mouse, so it's pretty shaky to boot. Now, not to mention, you have to deal with the absurd weights because of the bad capacity, and it sits in a pretty open area that could have probably been used for something better, so it just falls here at number 9. It's not something I ride really anytime I come here anymore. Coming in at number 8, we have Riddlers Revenge. Once known as Mind Eraser, this Vekoma SLC was rethemed after receiving new trains and fresh paint back in 2017 to fit in the new Gotham City area. Now, I rode this as both, and man, it's really a lot better now, but that's not saying too much. Mind Eraser was one of the worst roller coasters I've ever ridden. Now, the new trains remove the headbanging, but they also clamp down on your legs throughout, and the track is still filled with the same wonky transitions and rattles that really plagued the first version. Now, it's much closer to a decent ride now than it once was, but unfortunately, it still doesn't quite hit that mark for me. Now, a positive note, my last visit was the first time I've ever seen them run 2 trains on the coaster, which is always appreciated, especially when those ride-offs took forever to dispatch trains from this for some reason. Now at number 7, we have the third and final Vekoma of the park, Flashback. One of the oldest boomerangs built and relocated twice, this ride is pretty rattly. Without the vest, you really do have to be careful not to bang your head around, but this ride is over pretty quick, and honestly, it's a toss-up between this and Riddlers for me. It's not often that a shorter ride time is actually a benefit, but with these old Vekomas, it's actually appreciated. Now, I did skip this in my last visit, but it just isn't anything special, and I hope that they do remove Goliath soon, they also take out Flashback so they can make room for a truly quality edition instead of just another filler ride. With number 6 comes a small step up in quality. The park's oldest operating roller coaster, the classic Woody Thunderbolt, opened in 1940 as Cyclone, but was relocated from Flushing in 1941. Now, the custom layout has some decent pops of airtime here and there, and it really isn't rough, but it doesn't really excel at anything either. The 3 laps are fun enough to do the job, but the park could definitely use a more modern Woody coaster as well. Now, to start the top 5, we have Pandemonium, a Gerstlauer spinning coaster. Now, I remember when this was themed to Mr. Six, and this ride has always been a blast. Now, these are cloned in 2 other Six Flags parks, and you need to basically rope drop them to beat the crowds, but from kids to enthusiasts, these coasters give some good forces and a lot of fun spinning. Now, the layout is pretty great for a small spinner, and honestly, it's one of the better family coasters out there. You just gotta find a way to improve the capacity, please. It's always a 45-minute wait, even as soon as the park opens. Now, 4 is yet another clone for the park, Joker and SNS Free Spin. Now, like all the other free spins in the chain, this ride can give some of the most extreme experiences among any coaster in the world. Every time I ride, I think I'm ready for that first flip, but it always surprises me. Now, this does feel like a flat ride, and it was a replacement for a water slide, so you can't really complain there, but it feels like a filler edition, and I just hope that this doesn't stay as the newest coaster for that long. The park's only B&M flies into number 3. Batman the Dark Knight is one of the shorter floorless coasters out there, but it still features 5 inversions. Now for that reason, it has some of the best pacing of any floorless coaster I've ever ridden. Now with the only filler track here really being that turnaround, it really leaves you on the brakes, excited to get on and ride again. Now if only it had more room and the park had added a little bit more track, this could have been my favorite of the category, but it's just a little too short to top Dominator and Bizarro. Finally, we've reached the top 2, and we jump nearly 40 spots in my overall ranking here. Zooming into silver is the Intimate Hyper Superman the Ride. Now, I've gotten to ride this coaster as its original version with the T-bars, as Bizarro, and then back to Superman, and the downgrade and restraints have kept this from being a truly elite coaster for me. Now, when I first rode the coaster, it was my favorite, albeit with a much smaller coaster count, but the U-bricks put the sharp pressure on your thighs, and it ruins so much of the ride, especially the airtime. That being said, the layout itself is nearly perfect, with airtime hills, a twister section, and multiple tunnels and flyby elements. Now, the only real knock on the layout itself is probably that the first drop, it's not very steep, doesn't give great airtime, and it doesn't really compare to some of the airtime you get on more modern drops. Now, this dropped down to 22nd on my overall list after this visit, but with better restraints, it could easily be a top 10 if not top 5 ride for me. But in my opinion, those U-blocks are worse than Skyrush's lap bars. Then at the top spot we have the park's RMC, Wicked Cyclone. Since opening in 2015, it has raised the entire lineup of this park drastically. This was all the way up at number 4 on my overall list as late as 2019, but it currently sits at number 8, not too bad. Now the coaster is really a masterpiece of what RMC can do with a minimal canvas. The first drop is one of the best in the world in the back, and it's only 109 feet tall. Every inversion is different in intensity, with the stall being extremely whippy, with hang time, a medium roll, and then a slow hang time filled roll at the end. The double down supplies another moment of really shocking ejector, especially when you can't see the difference in the 2 drops from the back. Now the final lap around the layout is definitely slow, but once the ride really warms up in the afternoon, those hills still supply good airtime, and the ride is better for having the extra length. Now I don't think the ride could be all that much better given its size. I mean, maybe some sharper outer banks on a turnaround, but that would be really nitpicking a ride that throws you side to side as is. It's an easy number 1 at the park, and really the main reason I come back here. So before we wrap up, I wanted to look into the collection as a whole a little bit more. Seeing as I already tackled a what's next for the park, I'll just reiterate what the park is really needing, and that's a new addition. Specifically a launch coaster to round out a lineup that's really top heavy. Replacing the boomerangs with something from S&S to crack the top 3 could really make this park more of a draw for tourists. As for the other holes, some more smooth rides in general would be great. Maybe a modern Woody, but I don't think that really fits anywhere in the park. But it'd be a nice round out piece. Now that being said, what do you think of this park, and would you move any of these picks around? I know the bottom of the lineup is a little bit arbitrary to rank as most of the rides are one and dones or even skips on busy days, but I want to hear your thoughts below. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video, as it really helps support the channel and get this out to new viewers. So till next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.